Hello, BookTube. Well, it's a bleak and barren Sunday. Once again. The very first one in April. For those of you who are new to the channel, that means that it's a day with no mail. No free books at the slot in the front door for Steve. No pitter-patter of postman's feet. Which makes the day pretty long when you get used to having books in the mail. So I thought I would console myself with a tag. And I found one that I rather liked. It's called For the Love of Classics. And I saw it on Katie Howe's channel, but it was made by Beyond the Pages and The Skeptical Reader. And it's a little more than a dozen questions about classics. And this being BookTube, that means anything written in the last 100 years. I'd be perfectly happy to do the tag that way, and maybe some other forlorn Sunday I will do that. But for today, I want to do it according to what I think of when I hear the word classics, which is my favorite kinds of literature, the classics of Greece and Rome. So I'm going to answer these questions without straying too far from that. Starting with question number 1, why do you read the classics and how often? Why, at this point, for me, is old friends. They are my oldest friends, reading-wise. I love them. I have spent so much time with them. And the how often is connected with the how much time, which is, as you've seen, some of you have seen on this channel in the last year that we've been together, the number of new books that I get in the mail has drastically increased over the last year or two. And at the same time, the number of venues where I am reviewing books, for money in print, has also increased. So over the course of those months, the shape of my reading has changed to exclude a lot of the rereading that used to make up a large portion of what I read. And that has also shaped how I read the classics. It hasn't eliminated it, but it's meant that usually the classics that I read will be new. There'll be new translations into English of classics. That's how I right now feed my classics diet, is with new versions of the classics. And fortunately, there are enough of them so that I can do that. Every once in a while, I will revisit those penguins on the back wall there. I will revisit an old translation of a classic, and that's always wonderful. And of course, every summer in June I reread the Iliad, and in August I reread the Odyssey. But other than that, how often is dictated nowadays by publishers, which never used to be true. Question number 2: what is a period or country that you haven't read as many classics in as you would like to? And for me, that's easy. It's China. I've read a number of their greatest classics, but only in usually one translation apiece. In literary histories of China, I hear all about epics and great works of literature that I've never read. And I'd like to rectify that. Question number 3. Which modern book do you think will be a classic in 100 years? I'm going to stick with the classical motif that I have running throughout here, and name the book-length poem Omeros by Derek Walcott, which is a brilliant relocation of Homer and a modernization of Homer, and I think it's his best work, and I firmly believe that it will be taught in schools, and therefore that it will be remembered. Let me see here. Question number 4. What was the last classic that you read? It wasn't Greece and Rome. It was India. It was Arjuna the Hunter. It was part of the Murti series of Indian classics being done by Harvard University Press. They very nicely send me the new ones, and I fall behind all the time. But I just read Arjuna the Hunter, which is a 6th century elaboration on one incident in the Mahabharata, and I thought it was fantastic. I really did. Question number 5. What was the first classic you read? That would be Homer. Question number 6. What is your favorite classic book cover? I actually have a candidate for this. I think it's a little bit of an odd question. It's this. It's the Trojan Epic. This is a translation by Alan James of Quintus of Smyrna's Post-Homerica. long, and I like it not only because there are so many horses. You know, the Trojan War is a story of Bronze Age war, so there are horses pulling chariots, and there are horses screaming and dying all the time, but also because famously the Trojan War ends with a horse. And I really like that. It's disturbing, the cover. It's artistic and disturbing. It's both violent and beautiful, which is what the Iliad is all about. And I very much like this translation, except that it kills me because I wish more people read Quintus of Smyrna. I think he's fantastic. I think the Post-Homerica is just great. But that's my favorite classical cover by a long shot. So I'll go with that one. Question number 7. Classic author you wish had written more books. There is one. And there is one. I mean, the reading classics is frustrating for that reason, too, because we don't have a lot. We know about a lot more books than we actually have, which is very tantalizing. Yeah, you keep wishing that somewhere in Saudi Arabia, or somewhere where there's arid conditions and undisturbed subterranean spaces, you keep wishing that a library will turn up that will have all of Euripides, all of Aeschylus, that will have all of Livy, that will have all the stuff that we know we're missing, all sorts of stuff that we don't have anything of, or only one line or two. It's just maddening to think that stuff is missing, and that any average library had it once upon a time and maybe didn't think it was all that great. And one of the things, the one that I wish had written more, I'm going to pick one that wasn't actually written. It's not one that we don't have. It's that because of time. It's one that we don't have because the author never got around to it. The great Roman historian Tacitus wrote histories for his whole life and commented towards the end of his life, when the nightmare of bad emperors finally seemed to be over, and a new emperor, not an Italian, not from the Roman families, and a man named Trajan, had ascended to the throne and was now the emperor of Rome, and was an honest, open guy. And let it be known that up to a very generous point, he really didn't care what his subjects said about any subject, including himself. And Tacitus commented that since we now live in an age where a man can think what he wants and say what he thinks, Tacitus thinks that he will write a history of Trajan's reign, and he never did it. He never did it. So that, more than any other classical book, that I wish we had, that would be wonderful. I don't so much wish that we had Trajan's own memoir. Famously, it survives in only one sentence. But I have a feeling, heavily ghostwritten as it is, that it would probably have been boring reading. So I would rather have the book that Tacitus never wrote than the book that Trajan did. But anyway, let's move on here. Question number 8. Who's your least favorite classical author? That would be Julius Caesar. Question number 9. Favorite translated classic. It's a book I've mentioned on this channel once or twice, I think. It's Aubrey de Selincourt's translation of the books of the Roman historian Livy, dealing with Rome's war with Hannibal, with Carthage. That was made into a volume for Penguin Classics called The War with Hannibal. And Aubrey de Selincourt's translation is just, it's an absolutely much-thumbed pleasure to go through. It just is. So that definitely gets my vote for favorite translation. Question number 10. Favorite modern classic, something published after 1900. And I have... I'm still going to stick with the classical theme here. And if I stick with the classical theme, it's kind of a toss-up for me between the Memoirs of Hadrian by Marguerite Yourcenar and I, Claudius by Robert Graves. Both of which, they're very different books, but they're both, I think, really good. I, Claudius, I think, tends to be undersold as a work of literature. But I'm very happy to see, actually, that both of them routinely get reprinted. So, here's hoping. But I in terms of classical themed modern works that I go back to, it's them more than anything. Question number 11. Classical literary places you would like to visit. If we're talking about ancient Greece and Rome, I got them all. Question number 12. First classic you would recommend to a child. Well, that's easy. It's a classic that's been recommended to children forever, since it was written. Aesop's Fables, which are perfect reading for children, and yet, if you go to them as an adult, especially with a nice big annotated edition like the one made by, oh wait, nobody. If there were such an edition and you went to it as an adult, you would find plenty to entertain you. Question number 13, classics you think are mistitled and your new titles. I don't really have an answer to this question. Most classical literature, most works of classics from ancient Greece and Rome we don't know their titles. They didn't really have what you'd consider titles, and I'm perfectly okay with calling them anything an editor wants. So I think that question is more aimed at people who are doing this for modern classics. Question number 14, favorite classic you would recommend to anyone? I would go with the biographer Suetonius, who did a series of Roman lives that are just he did the lives of the Caesars, and included a lot of racy stuff, a lot of interesting tidbits, a lot of gossip, more accurate history than naysayers tend to give him credit for, but also, boy oh boy, he knows what will sell. He knows what will get the scrolls flying out of the shops in the Suburra, and it still works. Even in an English translation, it still works. In fact, there's a fairly good, little bit dated translation by Robert Graves himself, the author of I, Claudius, but there are lots of others too, and I would recommend him first. If you pick him up and you know nothing about the classics of ancient Greece and Rome, and you don't get that there were living people 2,000 years ago writing these things for a living audience, they were trying to make points and have ideas and sell some books. If you can read Suetonius and not get that, then the classical world is probably closed to you. Although another prime candidate, if we move from Rome to Greece, would be Oedipus Rex, which I don't think can fail as a drama. I don't think Aristotle, I hate to agree with him, but Aristotle said the same thing. I don't think it can fail as a drama. I think if you watch it, especially if you watch it staged, which I'm sad to say is hard to do, if you're lucky enough to have a stage version anywhere near you, it works. It really does. So maybe that as well. And then we get to the end. This has indeed perked me up this very early hour on a bleak and barren Sunday. And question number 15 is tagging people. And I want to tag some classic viewers, if you would. I want to tag Elisa from Paper Bits. I want to tag Today in Jen's Library. I want to tag Jen from Reading with Pugs. I want to tag Olive from A Book Olive. I want to tag Sue from Sue's Book Nook. My classic viewers. That's not to say that you're from ancient Greece and Rome. You're all fresh as daisies. But I'd love to hear your answers to these questions if we haven't done this tag. And I'm going to go for now, but I'll see you soon, Book 2. Thank you.